It always has been individual work, but we have been trained to think of the work of the individual as something relatively impotent, relatively meaningless, relatively redundant, sort of almost like not important.
Or even lately, I've heard a lot of rhetoric, I mean really direct rhetoric about, almost the selfishness of the individual. And a lot of the hive mind hype that I've heard a lot on media and different places, but that's a little more like in your face with it too.
Well, it all adds up. It's all part of the same, it's all part of the same poison. It's all part of the same virus. Yeah. And if you were to interview people like Nikki Rapana, people who've really deeply looked into the whole, future of mankind in the sense of the global village, which she is an expert on. I mean, she's been on Jeff Rent's. I've got links on my forum to Nikki Rapana's marvelous interviews. Again, very much in the tradition, you see, of those who believe that the communist experiment is not at all faded away. It's just been revamped. It's been insinuated now. The communist experience of how to control societies was an experiment that happened in Russia, but it's actually now been transmuted fully, a full package, and now it's trying to be inserted into the sociology of the Western mind. I do believe this. I believe you can see evidence of it, and it ties very much in with the whole electronic thing, the RFID cards that are on their way, and all of these things that people are afraid of, like various forms of identification cards, implants, different modalities of the cashless society. What we have to understand is that all has to be framed in the global village concept. You can't just point to one individual thing, or even cell phones, you see, and tracking and what's that, GPS, and all of these things that we've dealt with in the latest DVD, and we're going to be doing more on this subject. This all is part of a predicted global village that was, very much on the mind of even Sir Francis Bacon and people before him. The people, even for people who don't know, the term utopia actually is an invented word, and the only definition for the word meant no place. So if it means no place, then the indication is it was never meant to be a physical in its inception. The no place is a digital kingdom. It's a no place, meaning that, again, like the digital, like the internet, like all of the kind of, cyber technotopia that's coming, we're going to be soon in a prison, but it's going to be a prison, without walls. This is what they've wanted. And people have to be ever mindful of this, because the experiment may have been in the Soviet bloc or whatever, but it was U.S. money, and it was British money, and it was secret society money that funded and perpetrated this. The leaders of the communist movement all had houses, and all were residents in America before they made their way to the Soviet Union. See, this has all been documented. And now the experiment that went on there for, 40, 50 years or so, has just been moved in package over here. So
Clinton was fairly tied into that, wasn't he?
They all were.
In his education, he spent a lot of time in Russia, and he had some really interesting connections to, I think, this story that you're talking about.
And particularly the Rockefellers. You have to look even behind the scenes of the normal presidents, but look back to, even rat as he was, Winston Churchill, look even into his memoirs and how he warned the West about this, first of all, he warned about the German-Russian alliance, which, or more specifically the Stalin-Hitler alliance, which he was very much afraid was a very bad sign, and he was right. And then, of course, later on, he warned about the communist threat, but see, the communist threat has revamped itself into the Russian mafia now, which is not something that has a short history. The mafia coming out of Odessa and out of the Pale of the Jews in just south of Moscow, a gigantic settlement, one of the largest ghettos in the world, which is always involved in white slavery and opium dealing and all sorts of pernicious stuff. You see, this whole mob now is ensconced in America. It's part of the reason why America's industry is destroyed. But
it seems like it could be kind of almost the bleakest concept that you could think of, is that, well, whether it would be the communist connections, or then you could take, like we were talking about, environmental connections, but basically they could almost take any formation of civil group of any kind, and it all gets twisted and turned into the direction of this kind of overriding agenda, which doesn't seem to have anything to do with communist, environmentalist, or anything.
Right. These are only the Hydra. These are only the heads of the Hydra.
Right.
It might be very difficult for people to actually see what the main agenda is. I always refer to it simply, in the most simple way, without elaboration, as the war on consciousness.
Yeah, in that direction of understanding that it is truly a war on consciousness. But this is where I was coming, was trying to conceive of, and this is my most positive thought of this, is that if it was that easy for them, well, they would have been done with it back when right after they killed the last druid, right? They would go, okay, job's over. We got it all wrapped up. So this obviously this whole process takes this maintenance. This whole process takes these years and years and years and hundreds of years of driving it, pushing it, every time getting a little deeper, every time getting a little further. But it does take this maintenance, right? And so if it takes this maintenance, that means they're fighting down, they're holding down. This is where I'm trying to see our power that we can, rise up with, is that they're holding all this back, but they really got their finger in one hell of a dam, I would assume. There's some strength there, no?
Well, they're not strong.
No, that's what I'm saying. Within us is the strength that they're holding down.
Yes, but then you have to see the only thing that is positive is the observation of the enemy. When people talk about, what's positive about any of this, is the observation and the discovery, which is now, I'm glad to say, going on, of the fact that you now know that there is a parasite among you. You see, it's like, right. The table of 12, not realizing there's a Judas, It's like a criminal conspiracy in which you don't even know, who the element is. And remember, it's often a culprit, a perpetrator, a predator within the body politic. This, of course, taken to its fullest concomitant, it's about the genes, again, that we all contain an alien DNA, so it's very easy for people of a stronger alien persuasion to work on us, because we have something of them inside of us. I mean, there's so many ways to look at this. But more akin to what you were talking about is, you see, yes, it is very difficult for these people, and that's why it has taken so long. Because remember, the world was a very different, kind of world, even 100 years ago, when our fathers worked on the fields, and died in mines and died in factories. And just pushed horses and plows on the fields, to move us into the new age where the technologies are now restored and so on. But these people, they have had great successes as well. But they're ruthless and they're psychotic. So if they ever feel that they're up against something that, does get in the way of their plan, be it the biggest plan or a plan that's just more pragmatic, they will destroy, mutilate, and murder to forward their goals. It's like, obviously, this thing with Iraq falls into that same category. It's only part of a greater plan, but in order to move the plan forward, look how ruthless they have been.
Yeah.
So it's been like that all down through civilization. Yes, they targeted the Druids and wiped them out. That was a huge, positive success for them. That's always been something that's a marked, success. That's why they did it. They had a very, very clear understanding that if such people existed, not a single one of their acts of sorcery would have continued, you see. Not one of their monstrous paradigms or any of their cities, these ugly, filthy, rotten cities that people think are so wonderful and normal, or any of the kind of farming, you see, or any of the relationships that we have to nature would simply not have been permitted by people who were in tune with the earth and who knew what was what. I mean, just cut it right down to there.
Yeah.
They certainly would not have been able to work on the human mind, which is a form of attack that has happened since the advent of the cities, and since man has been, clustered in these awful towns and cities. The next step then is to work on them as one herd, indistinguishable of class or, creed or whatever, anything else. They all come under the one leash at that point. Well, that also wouldn't have been, permissible. It wouldn't have been possible with a kind of a priestarchy that knew what was going on and who warned its people about this kind of thing. You see, but then, of course, the earth catastrophes, the physical catastrophes that just happened on the earth that traumatized people, happened at the same time as these great conflicts, between the Nephilim, between the Lemurians or the Atlanteans or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
so it was a combination of all things that were happening at the same time has actually helped, because that traumata that fractured the ego is the central thing to understand when you're talking about solutions to the problem. Because if your patient is already basically psychotic and only held together with the thinnest glue, and that any kind of trauma, any even minor trauma, can split his consciousness again, you've got the perfect mannequin. You've got the person who can be completely controlled, you see. And unfortunately, maybe it wasn't their cause that did it. They didn't cause this, but it's a byproduct of the age of catastrophe. It's a byproduct of the splitting of consciousness. So getting back to your point, when has there ever been a normal, where has there ever been a true, and I mean true, adjusted, spiritualized normalcy that any of the other stuff can be read as antithetical or adversarial? Is not the entire world psychopathic and basically sadistic and wrapped up in... So the only time that my message uses the we or addresses people as a collective is to say, I'll tell you where you're collective. I'll tell you why my message goes out to you all. People are in a dire state of absolute... And it wouldn't even matter whether you had an Illuminati praying over your ass or, you know, sadistic royal families or warmonger. The state that you're in is, like Plato said, subhuman. The job of religion, the job of any true spirituality was to try and get you from the subhuman level up to the human level. And you are people who want to find out what the angels are doing and what God might be doing? Yeah. How dare you, said Plato. Think first, or Socrates said through the symposium, can we agree that the way man acts towards his brother, the way he acts towards the women, the animals of the world, the way he acts to the nature of the world, which we talk about the true conservation, is subhuman in exactly the same way if you watch the end of the movie The Green Mile, or so many other films you see that deal with this, that basically shows you the kind of suffering and horrendousness and sadism that is operating in our world. Man is already, and I believe that is partly through artificial, you know, reasons that he's been suppressed. But let's leave that aside for a moment. The fact of the matter is that I don't care what level of profession the person's at, no matter what qualifications they've got, no matter what type of academic status they have. I don't give a damn what collar they got around their neck and what church they come from. Everyone I see, with only extremely few exceptions, those you can count on the fingers of half a hand, are in a state of pathology or psychically, you know, deranged people. So, and it doesn't take much to see this when you're really cold about it and you really look at what people are about and what they're doing and what they talk about and the kind of nonsense that they're into, okay? This is calling a spade a spade. It is no wonder then that in a pathological, you see, recalcitrant situation like that, that ghouls, specters, ghosts, monstrosities, you see, all manner of vile things start emanating. It's exactly the same thing you'd expect from a boneyard. I've seen vultures hopping in India where they have, you know, the abattoirs and the boneyards are outside. They don't even have them covered up. What did I see hopping on the top of all that? Well, there's the vultures and there's the carrion crows. And it's never, ever, I've never forgotten about that because I see it in exactly the same way when I look at this, you know, the world in which we're living. So if you have these George Bushes, and if you have these popes, and if you have these, you know, black popes, and if you have all of these monsters, and we know their biographies, you know, people like myself, we study them, we talk about them, you know, all over our websites and in our books and stuff like that. But if you see individuals like this, and if you see them even in the average schoolyard, and if you see these people even at your place of work, in the most, all around you, some people that are just, you know, so ridiculous and so sadistic and whatnot, it is not because they are some freak, you know, just person that fell from the sky. Yeah. They are an outgrowth of a very, very toxic situation. And therefore, the only way that an individual can change that situation is to change themselves. There's no we about it at all. You have to, you know, just like I've always used this analogy in the movie Nostradamus, when the whole city he's in, and it's been a while since I've seen the movie, so I can't remember where he was exactly, but plague has come to the entire city, and everyone is dying, and also everyone has gone kind of mad, so they're running around with insanity, you see. And what does he do? He goes over by the well, he strips himself off completely naked, and he brings up the, you know, the clean water that's still clean from this well, and he washes himself off. And the camera pulls back because it wants to give you, the makers of the movie are trying to communicate to you an incredible metaphor here. And that metaphor is a real metaphor. And that is that no matter how bizarre, and believe me, just need to watch MTV and you'll find out that we're pretty bizarre. You just need to watch what's coming out of Hollywood and you think, how more weird can it get, right?
Yeah.
Or you have to watch it and you go downtown and listen to what people are talking about any given weekend. You can pretty tell me it's bizarre, all right? So here we are, and you're in the middle of this. You're in the middle of this absolute chaos where people are pretty much teetering on the edge of total pathology, total insanity. And, you know, even a lot of the people have known this for a long time, so they're on medication. It's all over. They're self-murdered or whatever, you know, description you want to give to it. The only answer is to do this concept, like this Nostradamus character is doing, and that is find the well, find the still spot point,
Right.
find the center,
water.
which you have within yourself, or as Joseph Campbell would have said, find your bliss, and go there. And it can be many things that bring you to there, but it will not be the same for Michael as it will be for Adam. It will not be the same for the person who's listening to us right now as it will be to their neighbor. It'll be different. Don't expect a one-size-fits-all, A to Z sort of, directory as to how to do this. This is the beauty of the shamanic way. It's the beauty of the individual way. And that is that, it's individual. There was one crazy horse. There was one Jesus Christ. There was one Buddha. You know what I mean? There was one Merlin. There was one King Arthur. Why is it one? Because that's the whole message of history, is that it's the individual. So anytime that you hear the we, the us, and the our, particularly, of course, it goes without saying, when you hear it coming from a major situation in which, like, say, we were using Gore as an example there with this new little clique, this new little thing.
Yeah.
What is that? That's another we, our, us. That's another man, another animus figure, another godlike figure, another priest, another sorcerer, you see, standing up on stage, waving his wand, talking about some traumatic thing.
So
Number one, he's leading you away from your personal consciousness. It's always an external, they want your money, they want your checks, they all want you to focus on some external, global issue. So don't look at the psyche. Number two, he is a steadying archetype, or because he represents the father archetype, they pick a man, they pick a politician who will, have those characteristics. Not that he has the faintest idea. He's just some egomaniac loving the ride. But, the people who are controlling him, they would know all this. They would understand all of his psychology. Whether he's aware of it or not is a whole other point. And thirdly, it's absolutely collective, because people get together in collectives for one very simple reason. And this goes to the heart of everything you've been talking about. What is the main key? What is the main problem? What's the main solution? Here it is. People go towards collective things. They're attracted towards collective things because they're deeply insecure inside. Therefore, you lean on your brother. It's you need to lean on people now because you're terribly dependent. You're the opposite of independent. Independent, as I said, a talismanic word that's used that has no validity anymore. And therefore, there's a reason why people want to sit there in these mass audiences. You see, there's reason why they want to sign on to all this nonsense, no matter what it is. There's a reason why they play the political game, even when they know, as you yourself have said, that it leads bloody nowhere except to more chaos, you see. It's all rooted in the psychology of people having no longer any ego centrality, no egocentricity. That's all been shattered and broken. There's many reasons as to why that is, and they all need to be studied. And when people are that weak, that solitary, they're going to run into marriages, they're going to run into collective action, they're going to run away from themselves. And as soon as society, any of these, figures, these people who are playing the archetypes, present something to you again, it really can be people as preposterous as George Bush or as preposterous as John Hagee, in the Christian movement, and all the tribe of people like that, and they just have to put on a smile and they just have to talk in a certain way, and believe me, people are going to be gaga. And the reason is they're running headlong from themselves. They have no inner core whatsoever. It's gutted. It's like a cemetery in there. And so the answer is to turn that around. The answer is to try and give people some awakening to this. And you can't give it to anyone anyway. It has to come from inside. But at least you can present the signpost that says, look, this kind of action that you're involved in leads to disaster. Let me show you how. I can show you the message of the past, and I can show you the message of what's going on in our world today, and I can present the evidence that shows you that this kind of action, this kind of political action, is nowhere. And I can show you that this kind of psychological action is far greater, both for yourself in the short term and for the world, in the larger term. A teacher can show that. He can try through his life to demonstrate these facts and draw on the proofs and evidences for this. But whether or not the world get it, or whether the world, buy into that, is absolutely their own affair. It is, because believe me, it doesn't matter. If people want to play this game, if they want to have all of this stuff coming down, then by all means they can have, and they can deserve the tragedies that befall. I am no pessimist. I don't care about that. If this is the road that men have to go on towards destruction, then so be it. Somewhere it is written in the natural order that will happen, and there'll be a new order to come out of this, this defunct world. There'll be a new growth, a new order of things in a more natural way. I don't look at it as being a bad thing at all. Whatever is broken, whatever is bad, in the end it needs to be trashed. Yeah. So people have the opportunity and they have the choice to change, and it's up to them. And if they don't want to do it, then fine. Then we'll have a world that just descends into further and further debauchery and chaos. But I'm all right with that, you see. Let it happen. if it's meant to be.
Of its own, it would come to its final conclusion. Like you were saying before, I mean, I've always said it as any path that is not a path of life is a dead-end road, and eventually it will self-extinguish itself. And you were saying earlier in another talk about that nature is self-healing, and that if you look at it in a natural history kind of perspective, really hasn't been going on that long. So when people think, well, when's it going to end? You know, it really hasn't been here that long. So its natural end, it could be literally around the corner. That doesn't mean we are going to experience it maybe within the next 100 years or so, but that's really just a flicker in the length of time that we're actually talking about.
Well, I believe that, you see, there is a significance about the year 2012 and this, at least the countdown period to that time, and it has to do with the fact that there is a lot to worry about, but that the only people who have a lot to worry about are the George Bushes and the sorcerers, and even on the street level, the people who have not done their spiritual homework. I absolutely believe that we've already entered that time. And from the kind of, reactions that I've been seeing, even in people in the last 10 years, since even the mid-90s, and I can even take it back a little bit more than that, but certainly up until, especially from my experiences, certainly I've seen since 2000, let's just go from there.
Right.
There has been dramatic changes in the lives of the people that, are no good. I mean, the people who've been doing evil, who've been cutting corners, who've been avoiding their, responsibilities and avoiding their inner homework and so on. I do believe that there has been a shift already, and it's going to increase and increase and increase down the line. And a lot of the things that we're seeing on the governmental side are sort of reactions to this. People can be, you can get into astrology or whatever terminology you want to account for all of this. But I believe there's a phase shift that has taken place, and it's going to continue, that our world is going to be radically transformed, radically different in just the next 4 to 5 years, absolutely. I already see it taking place, so in my mind there can be no doubt about it at all. Now, of course, what happens, any homeopathic person knows this, I mean, even most doctors know this, that you're going to have a toxic reaction first. Now, as I said, we've been seeing this toxic reaction for approximately 5 to 10 years, but it's been getting stronger and stronger and stronger every year. There was a large shift around about 2007, late 2006, coming into 2007, all of 2007, I've just seen just so many, you couldn't even, chronicle them, evidences of this. And now in 2008, the beginning, we have Pluto, the planet of this detoxification and this cleansing, entering into a very, very toxic sign, meaning that for sociology, for America, for the world, planet, the sign of Capricorn represents things that have a lot of, need to go through a lot of cleansing. So it's just it's just astrological jargon for something that is the natural cycle. Nature is already working through her agents, in other words, you know what I mean? And people can look at it on a biological level. The positive side to keep a focus on is the unbelievable amount of truth that is also becoming exposed. You just have to listen to some bands, the music alone, the stuff they're writing about, the amazing revelations, the amazing, I can't doubt it. Just look at my work.
That have opened.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, look at the work that I've been motivated to do. Do you think I planned any of this? It must be joking. People who know me know that that just simply is not true. The Atlantis book was never planned. The whole work on the Irish origins wasn't planned. The new book is coming out in a couple of weeks on astrotheology. None of this stuff, was planned in that overt way where you sit down one day and you say, okay, here's my 5-year plan or whatever. And I'm sure it's the same for a lot of people.
I think especially in this field where, when you really start to look and you're just peeling back the layers, you can't stop digging, because you keep finding, and
that's right.
Any theory that's worth holding on to, it has to be a theory that continually reestablishes itself and gets stronger and stronger because of the more information that you're able to find that holds it up. Yeah. Otherwise, you find something that tears it apart, well, let it go.
Let it go. And people should never forget that we call Mother Nature Mother for a reason. If a mother has taken her child to the grocery store or taken her child to the fair or whatever, and the child is just eating so much chocolate and all this kind of lunacy that kids get up to, right? Or whatever, other kind of nonsense, candy floss all over the face and whatnot. The mother runs to the child and tries to, save it from itself, because it just hasn't the faintest idea that it's just about to be dead, of the stupid things that it's doing, So, in a way, that's where we are right now. Mother Nature is saving her children.